Congressman, it's been a minute. Thank you very much for joining us, and so much to talk about as we head into January. First of all, one of the big things that's out there today is this conversation about rescinding the vaccination mandates with the military. I had the Senator Marsha Blackburn on to talk about this several days ago. I know that you represent the House, and so let's talk a little bit about your opinion on this. I know from previous conversations, you're all for eliminating that mandate.
Yeah, I've been, fighting the mandate. I ran several amendments both last year and this year with the National Defense Authorization Act. You know, the untoward effects that happen with COVID in this population are so small. And they always made the argument, well, this is about readiness. When a unit deploys, you can't have half the unit down with a cold or sickness or whatever, COVID. But the truth of the matter is this mandate has done more to damage readiness than COVID ever possibly could have. If you look at on the active duty side, they missed recruiting by 15,000, the Guard 7,500. The Guard had 62,000 people that didn't want to take the vaccine, so they basically made them non-deployable. So 62,000 plus 15,000 plus 7,500. I mean, that's how many people have been basically taken out of the formation, and it's insane for a virus that in this age group has very minimal effect. So it's just the stupidest thing on the planet.
You know, it's interesting, too, because I disagreed with the mandate at the time. I disagree with it now. Back then, even though I vehemently disagreed with the mandate, I at least understood the rationale behind it. I didn't agree with it, but I understood it. But right now, December 6th of 2022, where we are today with COVID, et cetera, it just seems like, you know, if we're supposed to, quote unquote, follow the science, there really is, and you're, of course, a doctor, everyone knows, it just doesn't seem to me like there is a scientific reason to continue to force this mandate.
No, there isn't at all. In fact, in August, the percentage of people dying of COVID actually crossed over, and more people died who'd been vaccinated than not vaccinated. So a bit of that is also suggestive of herd immunity and some other things. So there are some confounding, what we would call dependent variables in the scientific community. But regardless, the vaccine doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't work. It never worked in halting transmission, which would be a good reason to mandate it in a military unit. But it never did that. And now it doesn't seem to be that protective against the worst effects of COVID. So it is, again, if you were trying to prepare a military to be ready to go to war, you would stop this mandate. You never would have instituted it, of course, but you certainly would stop it now.
So this, of course, is a discussion related to the National Defense Authorization Act. And so now this is a negotiation, I guess, that takes place. And of course, the Democrats, well, I guess both parties try and stuff all kinds of things into the NDAA. This is something that happens every single year. So I guess the question is, what are the chances of this thing actually being repealed? What's the over-under here?
Well, we're just getting to D.C., so I haven't sat down with Speaker McCarthy or Kevin McCarthy yet. But I have heard his comments on television on two different occasions this weekend, as he was negotiating with the senior leadership and of the Democrat side. And he said on two different occasions that it will be rescinded. And I think in one particular occasion he said that we would reinstate everyone, which should happen again, should never have happened in the first place, but we need to rescind it and make it happen. So if that's a part of the negotiation, I have a meeting later this afternoon to get all the details from those guys who were in the negotiations at that level. So I'll know a little more later today, but from his news reports, that's great. That's great news. That's been a part of the negotiation. I really appreciate Kevin making that a line in the sand.
Congressman Mark Green joining us. I guess the uncomfortable part is that, and you're right, Kevin McCarthy, Speaker, maybe not, but he did come out and he said that he was drawing the line in the sand. He also said that he and President Biden had come to a negotiating point, but then Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday and other people within the White House said not so fast, and they said no, McCarthy is essentially mistaken in his assertions that they had reached some sort of a compromise. And so I guess the question is, one, are you surprised that there seems to be a bit of a disconnect there?
No, not at all. And recall that they threw Manchin under the bus with his deal after making a promise to him. They basically refused the promise. Now it's slightly different here because it's not two pieces of legislation. This will have to be in there. I hope we keep it in there. If not, it'll be in the next year for sure.